The year was 2031, but Earth did not announce it with fanfare. There was no sudden transformation, no great unveiling of destiny. The shift came like the slow unfurling of a new season, unnoticed until the trees were bare or the heat unbearable. Humanity had crossed an invisible line, not of time, but of understanding. Cities still throbbed with electricity, oceans still surged in tides older than history, and satellites still circled above like silent sentinels. But something in the human gaze had changed. It was quieter now, not in defeat but in contemplation. The old stories of dominance, of endless growth, had begun to rot at the edges. The machines were faster, the data deeper, the algorithms more precise than ever, but the questions returned to something older, something breathing beneath the code. What are we doing here, and who are we becoming? In the polished glass of megacities and the quiet corners of abandoned towns, the Earth in 2031 was not merely a place. It was a mirror revealing more of what we had been hiding from. In the Arctic, where the sun sometimes refused to set, ice that had once whispered the memory of millennia now moaned under its own vanishing weight. Scientists stood on cracked glaciers, measuring not only melt but mourning. The numbers were clear. Parts of Greenland and West Antarctica had reached points of no return. But the tragedy was not in the melting alone. It was in the silence with which it arrived. The world did not end in a scream, but in a slow sigh, as if the planet itself was exhaling a breath held too long. Yet within this sorrow, there was also a strange kind of grace. As the permafrost released ancient microbes, as ecosystems shifted in unpredictable ways, the Earth reminded its stewards that control had always been an illusion. Climate was not a problem to solve, but a story to listen to. And in 2031, more humans began to listen, not as masters, but as children humbled before the wild parent they had wounded. On the edge of the Sahara, once called a desert of death, life returned in strange ways. Artificial rainfall, geoengineering experiments, and genetically adapted crops turned sand into soil, and solar panels shimmered like black oceans. But these were not triumphs, they were negotiations. Humanity had learned that to terraform a region was not to conquer it, but to bargain with a force larger than understanding. Every gain in technology bore a cost in ethics. Who decided which regions deserved rain? What species were saved, and which were left behind? These questions pulsed in the minds of ecologists and farmers alike, reminding them that innovation without humility was merely dressed-up destruction. Yet still the seeds grew, still the trees reached up. In the quiet shadows of their leaves, some began to wonder if restoration was not just ecological, but spiritual, a way of returning not to the past, but to a place we never truly understood. In orbit, the sky had become a map of ambition. Thousands of satellites traced luminous trails through the dark, forming constellations that no longer served gods, but data. Earth's atmosphere buzzed with communication, observation, surveillance. From above, humanity looked peaceful. Grids of light, rivers of motion, cities like embers in a dark bowl. But beneath the surface, the lines of separation deepened. Nations had turned space into territory. The moon was no longer a symbol of romance or mystery. It was a prize. Bases were planned, resources mapped. Even Mars, that red echo of our mythic past, had become a checklist of steps toward habitation. Yet something strange happened as humans reached higher. They found not conquest, but reflection. The more they looked outward, the more they saw inward. The loneliness of the stars mirrored a loneliness in themselves. For every mission launched, a quiet voice asked, "If we leave behind this world, will we also leave behind our soul?" The oceans, once feared for their storms, had become feared for their silence. Coral reefs faded like forgotten paintings. Fish migrated in desperate patterns, and beneath the waves, machines swam where whales once sang. In 2031, the deep sea had become the final data frontier. Bioluminescent creatures once unknown were now catalogued. Hydrothermal vents were probed for energy, and yet, with every probe, the mystery deepened. Life thrived in places that defied biology, in conditions no theory could predict. Some scientists wept when they saw it, not from sadness, but from awe. For here, beneath the crushing weight of the ocean, life whispered a truth older than science. The universe does not need permission to astonish. In dark, high-pressure realms, evolution danced in alien rhythms. It reminded humanity that intelligence was not a crown, but a thread, one of many, woven through the vast and aching fabric of being. In the forests, sensors now replaced footsteps, drones mapped canopies in real time. AI predicted the births and deaths of trees. Yet even surrounded by such precision, a single walk beneath the branches still hushed the mind. In 2031, people rediscovered the sacred slowness of trees. Not as resources, but as relatives, forests were no longer seen as lungs to exploit, but as memories to protect. And in places where old growth still stood, Amazonian heartlands, Siberian stretches, fragments of Appalachia, there were moments that felt like time had forgotten to move. In those spaces, humans knelt not to pray, but to feel. Their fingertips brushed moss, bark, soil, and something stirred, an ancestral ache, a longing not to advance, but to belong. And maybe that was the quiet revolution of 2031, not in what humans invented, but in what they remembered. Beneath the surface of the earth, cities pulsed with a new kind of life. Not only biological, but digital, synthetic, augmented. Minds connected across continents through neural lace. Memories could be uploaded. Emotions simulated. And yet, even as the architecture of thought expanded, something strange persisted. Dreams. No matter how sophisticated the systems, people still dreamed of things they could not program. A face long lost, a place never visited, a feeling beyond description. Psychologists in 2031 began to study dreams not as random noise, but as sacred code, an interface between the measurable and the mysterious. Perhaps they began to whisper the human mind was not only a product of the brain, but of the universe itself, echoing the patterns of stars, waves, and time. And in this idea bloomed a fragile hope that consciousness was not alone, but part of a deeper song. The children of 2031 asked different questions, not what will I be, but why am I here? Born into a world of collapsing certainties and rising wonders, they carried a strange kind of wisdom. They were fluent in chaos. Comfortable with ambiguity, many no longer aspired to fame, but to meaning. They saw the earth not as something to escape, but as something to understand. Their classrooms were not confined to walls. They learned in forests, in simulations, in silence. Their teachers were not only human, but also models trained on the entire history of thought. And yet, the most powerful lessons came not from data, but from stillness, a sunset, a bird, a question with no answer. In these moments, the children of 2031 glimpsed something profound, that the future was not a destination, but a way of seeing. In the quiet spaces between invention and extinction, something unspoken began to rise. A global sense not of unity, but of shared fragility. Conflicts still burned, ideologies still clashed, but beneath the noise was a growing awareness. We are one species on one world, moving together through the dark. This awareness did not bring peace, but it brought perspective, and sometimes that was enough. In the middle of the Pacific, a floating lab drifted between plastic islands, filtering water and data. A scientist leaned over the edge, watching the stars reflect in the oil, slicked sea. She whispered a line from a forgotten poet, "We are made of water and wondering," and in that moment, the Earth in 2031 felt both lost and found. Above it all, the cosmos watched without judgment. Stars flared and faded, black holes churned, galaxies collided in slow, silent dances, and somewhere, perhaps not far, other minds, different, older, stranger, looked out at their own skies and asked their own questions. Were they watching us? Had they already passed through their own crises of meaning? Did they too wonder if they were alone? The Earth in 2031 could not answer, but it could listen, and in its listening, a new kind of future began, not one of certainty, but of possibility. In the darkness between stars, where time stretches like ancient silk and silence holds the weight of unspoken eons, There exists a truth too large for language. Long before Earth knew breath or bone, before even the first stars had burned themselves into memory, the universe was waiting. Not like a god, not like a machine, but like something older than either, a vast, unfolding quiet that carried within it the potential for everything and the memory of nothing. Galaxies spun like forgotten prayers, black holes opened like wounds in the fabric of reality, and light itself, so fast, so bright, could not outrun the loneliness of infinite space. The cosmos did not move with purpose, and yet it moved. A cold beauty radiated from the collision of gas and gravity, an elegance in entropy, a kind of order woven from chaos. Time was not measured in days or hours, but in the death, throes of suns, in the long arc of planetary drift, in the collapse and rebirth of spacetime itself. Somewhere, in this ocean of ancient silence, something began to notice. Not life as we know it, but awareness. A flicker in the deep, a question forming without words. What is all this for? Billions of years later, on a small blue world wrapped in oxygen and longing, that question would be spoken aloud, not with clarity, not all at once, but in pieces, in art, in equations, in dreams and myths, and the haunted silence that follows human laughter. Earth, so fragile in the vastness, carried within it a strange contradiction, a species capable of understanding the stars, yet unable to understand itself. From the first spark of fire to the orbit of satellites, from stone circles aligned to solstices to particle accelerators buried in the crust, humans reached outward not to escape the planet, but to make sense of it. And yet the more they discovered, the more impossible it all seemed. A universe fine, tuned for life but mostly lifeless. A planet teeming with complexity, yet destined for extinction. Intelligence that could map the genome, split the atom, and simulate creation itself, yet could not stop war or hunger or grief. Every answer deepened the mystery. Every discovery was a mirror reflecting a deeper absence. In the early 21st century, this paradox reached a new intensity. Telescopes peered into galaxies billions of light, years away, capturing light that had traveled since before Earth existed. Gravitational wave detectors listened for the echoes of black hole mergers, like ears pressed against the skin of the cosmos. Quantum computers simulated realities within realities. And somewhere between string theory and neural networks, a question began to haunt the brightest minds. Is what we're seeing real, not real as in physical, but real as in true? The simulation hypothesis gained traction not as science fiction, but as a serious consideration. That we might be living in a constructed universe coded by forces or entities beyond comprehension. The mathematics of reality, its discreteness, its strange symmetries, its limitations, seemed to echo the architecture of digital design. Space-time might be pixelated, consciousness might be a rendering glitch, and if so, what does it mean to be human? What does it mean to die, to hope, to love inside a simulation? At the same time, the search for extraterrestrial intelligence produced nothing but silence. The Fermi paradox loomed larger than ever. If the universe is so vast and old, where is everyone? Every year added to the quiet was another scream into the abyss. SETI listened, probes scanned, algorithms combed through cosmic static. But no signal came, no other voice rose from the void. Some believed we were early, the first flicker of awareness in a still, young cosmos. Others believed we were late, survivors in a graveyard of civilizations lost to their own brilliance. Still, others suggested something more disturbing, that we were never meant to find anything, that the silence was intentional, protective, or perhaps punitive. Among these great questions there emerged anomalies. Things that did not fit, stars that flickered in ways they shouldn't, galaxies that rotated too fast, entangled particles behaving as though time itself bent around them, even consciousness, so deeply familiar, remained completely unsolved. Neurologists could trace every signal in the brain, map every neuron, simulate decisions, memories, emotions, and yet the core of awareness, the I, the witness, remained outside their grasp. It was as if the thing observing reality was not fully in it. A ghost in the machine, not spiritual but spatial, a placeholder for something beyond dimension. And then there was the darkness, not metaphorical but literal. The universe, as it turns out, is mostly made of things we cannot see or understand. Dark matter, dark energy, names given not from knowledge but from ignorance. We know they must exist, because without them the galaxies would fly apart and the cosmos would collapse. But we do not know what they are. They are invisible hands shaping reality, surrounding us, passing through us, binding the very bones of the universe, yet remaining untouchable, as if the true structure of everything lies behind a veil we were never meant to lift. Or worse, one we are slowly lifting without knowing the cost. In the Andromeda galaxy, 200 million light years away, astronomers found a cluster of stars behaving strangely. Their light curves didn't match any known pattern. Some blinked out for years, then returned. Some twisted in spectral colors impossible under current physics. It was dismissed by most as instrumentation error, but a few, quietly, carefully, began to wonder. Could this be a message, not a transmission but a pattern? An intentional disturbance in the code of the cosmos, like graffiti on the wall of reality, not meant to be understood but to be seen, a warning, a sign of life, or something else entirely. A hypothesis emerged, whispered only in private circles. What if advanced civilizations don't communicate through technology, but through the fabric of space-time itself? What if they don't send messages because they are the message? At the edge of observable space, light bends into silence, redshift stretches galaxies into blood-colored ghosts. The farther we look, the younger the universe appears, until eventually we reach a wall, not a physical one, but a boundary of perception. Beyond it, not darkness, but something stranger, absence, and in that absence, a shape. Not a real shape, not yet, but something forming in the data, an anomaly in the cosmic microwave background, too symmetrical to be random, a cold spot too large to be chance, the signature, perhaps, of another universe brushing against ours, like ships passing in the night. Or a scar from something ancient, something that happened before time, before matter, a trauma in the bones of existence itself. In 2031, these questions had not been answered. If anything, they had deepened. Humanity had never known more about the universe, and never felt more lost within it. Every advance in knowledge widened the chasm beneath their feet. They stood on a cliff of understanding, staring down into an abyss not of ignorance, but of incomprehension. And yet, they could not turn away. The hunger to know, to see, was stronger than the fear. Even if the truth was unbearable, even if it shattered everything. Because somewhere, in the silence between galaxies, in the trembling of atoms, in the dreams of children and the pulse of stars, a question still echoed. A question too large to answer, too simple to ignore. Why does anything exist at all, and what is it hiding from us? Under the cold skin of space, the illusion of permanence dies. Everything that breathes, burns, or spins is already unraveling. Stars, so constant from a human view, are not eternal. They are machines of fusion, temporary scars in the void. Their light, warm and golden, is a kind of slow scream, a promise and a warning. Even the mightiest of them, the blue giants that tower in brightness over our sun, lay fast and die young. In the end, all stars collapse. Some into white dwarfs, glowing ghosts of former glory, others into neutron stars where matter is crushed until a single spoonful would outweigh mountains. And some, the most massive, vanish entirely, consumed by their own gravity, creating black holes. These are not objects in space, they are ruptures, holes not just in matter, but in the very structure of time and causality. Once something crosses their threshold, not even light can return, but more disturbing is what they do to time itself. From the outside, anything falling in appears to freeze at the edge, trapped forever on the border, yet from within it's different. Time flows forward, reality does not stop, the laws of physics do not break, they change. They become something else, something we cannot yet understand. This is not just theoretical. The Event Horizon Telescope gave us the first image of a black hole shadow, and in that blurry ring of light, humanity saw its own future. A symbol of what waits for everything, because entropy is not a theory, it is a law. The second law of thermodynamics states that energy spreads, order decays, and systems tend toward disorder. Stars burn out. Orbits decay. Temperature equalizes. Over vast time, this leads to the heat death of the universe, a state where no energy flows, no work is possible, and everything that once was becomes still. It is not fire that ends the universe, but silence. Cold, absolute, perfect silence. And though that day lies trillions of years ahead, the process has already begun. Galaxies are drifting apart. The night sky is thinning. With each billion-year breath, the stars grow fewer. Against this backdrop, humanity's efforts to reach out into the void seem both noble and tragic. For decades, they've launched metal messengers, Voyager, Pioneer, New Horizons, each carrying symbols of our species, music, diagrams, coordinates. Sentences written into time and flung into space, hoping someone will one day read them, but space is not kind to such hopes. The distances between stars are immense. The nearest one is over 4 light-years away, a journey of tens of thousands of years with current technology. Even light itself, the fastest thing we know, takes billions of years to traverse the cosmos. And still, the question remains, why, in a universe so old and vast, do we find only ourselves? The Fermi paradox hangs like a shadow over every radio telescope, every SETI algorithm. If intelligent life is common, where is it? We've been broadcasting signals for over a century. That's nothing on a cosmic scale, but if others had come before us millions or billions of years before, they would have colonized their galaxies, or at least sent detectable signals. But what we hear is silence, not static, not noise, silence. There are possibilities, of course. Maybe we're in a remote part of the universe. Maybe advanced civilizations don't use radio. Maybe they become post-biological, turning inward instead of outward. Or maybe, most chilling of all, there is something that prevents civilizations from surviving long enough to make contact. A great filter. War, AI, climate collapse, self-annihilation. A wall that most never pass. And if we don't see evidence of those who have succeeded, it may mean we are either rare and lucky or doomed and late. At the edge of observation, the mystery deepens. Dark matter and dark energy, the invisible engines behind cosmic structure and expansion, make up 95% of the universe. We cannot see them, cannot touch them, but their fingerprints are everywhere. In the way galaxies spin, in the way light bends around massive clusters, in the accelerating speed at which the universe expands. Our instruments show us the effects, but not the cause. It's like watching shadows dance with no source, feeling a wind with no air. The deeper we look, the more we find a universe not built for understanding, but for concealment. And then there is time. We live as if time flows, moment by moment, like a river. But Einstein's relativity shows that time is not absolute. It bends, slows, and stretches depending on speed and gravity. A clock on a mountaintop ticks faster than one at sea level. A person orbiting a black hole would experience hours while centuries pass elsewhere. Time is not a constant. It is stitched into space, forming a fabric that can be warped. And this has consequences. In theory, time travel is not forbidden. Closed time-like curves, wormholes, mathematical solutions exist. But whether they can be built or are only illusions allowed by incomplete equations is unknown. And even if possible, would it matter? Time may not flow as we feel it. The past, present, and future may coexist already fixed. Our choices, our regrets, our victories may be illusions of motion within a frozen landscape. We may not live through time, but simply experience slices of it. Quantum mechanics complicates things further. At the smallest scales, reality becomes probabilistic. Particles exist in multiple states until observed. Entanglement links particles across space instantly, suggesting a kind of hidden connectivity. The famous thought experiment. Schrödinger's cat is not just a paradox, but a reflection of how strange the world truly is. Reality, in some interpretations, doesn't exist until observed, and in others, like the many worlds interpretation, every quantum choice splits the universe into new branches. Every possibility is real somewhere. There are versions of Earth where history diverged, where civilizations rose differently, where we never existed. Infinite Earths, infinite paths, but we only experience one. Why? Why this one? This contradiction between the infinite and the specific, between the probabilistic and the lived, points to a problem deeper than any single theory. We do not know what reality is. Our models work, they predict. They explain, but beneath the math is mystery. Why does the universe obey laws at all? Why are the constants of nature so precisely tuned that life can exist? A slight shift in the strong nuclear force, and atoms would not form. A small change in the cosmological constant and galaxies would never coalesce. These are not generous margins, they are razor thin, and yet here we are observing, asking, alive. Some propose the multiverse, an endless collection of universes, each with different parameters. We happen to be in one where life is possible, not by design, but by statistics. Others propose deeper laws yet undiscovered that require the universe to be as it is. Still others return to simulation. That what we see is not base reality, but a constructed one. Every law, every constant, part of a program, not unreal, but designed. And if so, by what, by who, or by what kind of intelligence? As of 2031, no definitive evidence had settled these debates. But the anomalies were mounting. In the James Webb data, strange infrared signatures hinted at star systems forming far earlier than models allowed. In the quantum computing labs, errors kept appearing that couldn't be traced to hardware, patterns too coherent to be noise. And in deep space mapping, a gravitational lensing event suggested mass that wasn't just dark, it was moving in ways that contradicted known physics. There was a growing sense, unspoken but present, that reality was fraying. That something at the edge of knowledge was pressing inward. A quiet paper published in a minor journal went almost unnoticed. It proposed a new framework, that consciousness was not a product of matter, but a fundamental component of the universe, like space or time. That awareness might be woven into the fabric of existence itself, not an emergent property but a necessary one. The implications were staggering. It suggested that observation wasn't just passive but causal. That the universe requires witnesses to unfold, and that without us, or something like us, it might not exist in any meaningful way. This wasn't mysticism, it was physics, rooted in mathematical logic and quantum theory. But it was terrifying, because if awareness is fundamental, then death is not just personal, it is cosmological. Every extinguished mind might be a shuttering of the universe itself, every birth a reweaving. And still the stars die. Supernovas scatter elements into space, iron for blood, carbon for breath. The building blocks of life are born in fire, then spread across the void. Planets form from dust and gravity, each one a dice roll in the cosmic game. Most are barren, too hot, too cold, too irradiated, but some, a precious few, fall into the Goldilocks zone. Earth is one, not perfect, but sufficient. Stable enough for chemistry to become biology, for cells to become minds. But the conditions are temporary. Orbits change, suns age, asteroids fall. Life is a brief flicker in the long night. The fact that it happened here once is not a guarantee. It is a miracle or a glitch. And that is the problem. The more we know, the more the universe seems both inevitable and impossible. The laws are elegant but brutal. The scale is grand but indifferent. The possibilities are endless, but we get only one life. There is order, but no comfort. Design, but no designer. Intelligence, but no guide. We are standing in a cathedral of laws and forces we barely comprehend, surrounded by beauty that kills, and silence that speaks in riddles. And all we can do is look deeper, ask more, even as every answer splits into new questions, even as the edge of understanding begins to fray. There is something in the data, in the stars, in the silence. Something that doesn't fit, something waiting. It begins with a whisper, not from the stars, not from the earth, but from the void in between, that place where time thins, where silence has mass, where meaning itself seems to stall. We always believed the universe was waiting for us to understand it, but perhaps it was warning us to turn back, to stop asking, because behind the veil of science and mathematics, there is something colder than nothing. Not chaos, not destruction, but indifference. A silence that is not empty but full, full of all the things that never lived, all the words never spoken, all the civilizations that never formed. We are not surrounded by life. We are surrounded by potential, wasted, fallen, silent. Galaxies spin like prayer wheels in the dark, and not one of them answers back. There is no echo, there is no choir. We are the only voice in a cathedral the size of everything. And we are whispering. We were told we are made of stardust, and it comforted us. But dust has no direction, no promise, just drift. Stars die beautifully, but they still die. And when the last star burns out, when the last photon flutters into the cold, there will be no one left to mourn it. No eyes, no memory, no aftermath, just the cold equation fulfilled. Entropy wins. The universe does not care that we loved, that we dreamed, that we hoped. The math remains. Maybe we were never meant to survive. Maybe intelligence is not the crown of evolution, but its mistake. A brief spike in awareness before the return to stillness. A candle lit in a storm that had no use for fire. We look for patterns. We see faces in the stars, gods in the chaos, meaning in the numbers. But the truth is sharper. The truth has no face, no name, just laws, just decay, just distance. The Fermi paradox does not whisper. It accuses. It tells us we are alone, not because no one else exists, but because no one else survived. Intelligence may always turn on itself. Empires may always rot. Curiosity may always dig too deep. Perhaps they all reached the same point, built the same machines, split the same atoms, fell into the same silence. One by one, extinguished like candles in wind. We are told time will heal all things, but time doesn't heal, it erases. What is ancient becomes dust. What is sacred becomes stone. What is loved becomes forgotten. Even memory decays. The brain, a brief pattern of chemicals, collapses into stillness. The names we carve into monuments will be smoothed by wind, crushed by pressure, swallowed by the earth. And even the earth, this one blue miracle, will die. The sun will swell, the oceans will boil, the crust will crack. All life, all history, all color will be burned away in fire. The bones of our cities will melt. The dreams of our ancestors will fade into magma and ash. And there will be no one left to remember that we once sang under stars. This is the climax, not an explosion, not a revelation, but a stillness, a cosmic quiet that feels like drowning, the realization that there is no one coming. No savior, no signal, just us in this fragile breath of time, surrounded by infinite dark. Our voices will not carry, our flags will not matter, our names will not last. In 10 trillion years, the universe will be ice and shadow. And yet we knew, for a moment we knew. What do you do with that? What does it mean to build a cathedral of knowledge in a universe that will not remember? What does it mean to love in a cosmos that will forget? What does it mean to be human in a system designed for nothing? You breathe, you try, you reach, because even if the universe forgets, we do not. Even if the stars vanish, we were here. That may be the only miracle that ever mattered. We stood beneath ancient light and asked why. We turned suffering into music, emptiness into questions, silence into meaning. We gave shape to the void by dreaming inside it. Maybe we are not dust. Maybe we are the flame. The flicker, the spark that looks into the abyss and does not look away. Maybe that is our purpose, not to last, but to know, not to conquer, but to feel, not to escape death, but to make it beautiful. If we are the only ones, then every heartbeat is sacred. If we are the last, then every moment is a cathedral. If we are being watched, let them see we reached for something greater than survival. We reached for wonder. We reached for love. We reached for each other in the dark and called it civilization. And if time will erase us all, then let us carve our joy into the stars before we go. Let the universe bury us, but let it bury something beautiful. The earth is not large. It is a thin shell of green and blue wrapped around molten iron, drifting through the dark like a lone lantern on an endless sea, and yet it holds everything. Every language spoken, every hand held, every promise made, every song sung beneath the stars, all of it floats here, tethered to this fragile sphere by nothing more than gravity and time. From the cold reaches of the void, the earth is not even visible. But to a child standing barefoot on a field of grass, looking up into a sky laced with wind and light, it is infinite, and maybe that's all it ever needed to be. There is no contradiction in being small and infinite at once. We are finite and we are miraculous. That was always the secret. A seed falls into soil. It does not ask if the universe will remember its fruit. It does not wonder whether the stars will see its bloom. It simply breaks open quietly in darkness and becomes. Life has always moved forward this way, not because it is powerful, but because it is relentless, because even in silence it grows, and that seed in all its innocence may hold more truth than 1,000 galaxies because it reaches. Because it trusts the light will come, we now know the truth. We are not the center of anything, not even of our own story. The universe is vast beyond understanding, and it will end without our permission. But within that truth is something else, something deeper, the sheer unlikeliness of us, the absurd, beautiful chance that atoms aligned not only to create stars, but to create skin and breath and memory, to create love, to create thought. We should not be here, and yet here we are, laughing, breaking, healing, dreaming. The odds are not just low, they are cosmic. The fact of your existence is a rebellion against entropy. You are not an accident, you are a defiance, and now the question is not whether we matter to the universe, the question is whether we will matter to each other. The earth is a cradle, but it is also a responsibility. We are the only species, as far as we know, that can foresee its own extinction and still has time to prevent it. We are the only species that can look at a dying forest and imagine it alive again. We can destroy, but we can also choose, and in that choice is all the meaning we will ever need. Not given by gods, not written in the stars, but born in our hands, in our words, in how we treat the trembling lives around us. There are fires in the lungs of the planet, there is plastic in the blood of whales, there are oceans warming, skies choking, species vanishing without names. And we, the clever ones, the ones who reached the moon and split the atom, must now decide whether we are creators or caretakers or simply a spark that burned too fast. The apocalypse is not a prophecy. It is a decision, and it is still ours to make. But hope is not naive. Hope is not the absence of fear. Hope is the belief that even within limits, something more is possible. It lives in quiet places, in a mother teaching her child to read, in a hand planting a tree it will never sit beneath, in a scientist staying up late to solve a puzzle no one asked for. Hope is humble. It does not demand miracles, it asks only that we show up, and so we must show up, for the rivers that still sing, for the children yet to be born, for the stories still untold. If we are alone, then our kindness matters more than we know. If we are the first, then let us set a standard worthy of the cosmos. And if we are the last, then let our ending be filled with grace, not waste. Let it be remembered, if not by stars, then by ourselves, as a life well lived, as a world well loved. A single heartbeat on a single planet in a galaxy among billions. It does not seem like much, but it is enough to say yes, enough to say no, enough to hold another's hand in the dark and say, we are still here. Enough to choose every day between cruelty and compassion, between greed and stewardship, between apathy and wonder. This is what it means to return to Earth, not to retreat, but to remember that even in the face of silence we speak. Even in the face of darkness we see. That meaning is not found, it is made, carved out of the ordinary, lifted from the dust, handed down in stories, shared in meals, etched in laughter and tears and time. There will be no grand monument, no cosmic plaque marking our species' existence, but there is still the forest, and the ocean, and the breath of a child asleep beneath a window of stars. There is still this moment full of everything we could ever be. And there is still the choice to reach, to remember, to begin again, far beyond the solar wind, beyond the gravity well of Neptune and the quiet watch of Pluto. There is only the drift, no suns to warm it, no comets to stir it, only the cold and the deep and the hush of a billion silent miles. Out there, the galaxies move like lanterns in a dream, each one filled with stars that burn and die without ever being seen, each one a breath held in the chest of time. And between them, the dark moves patiently, holding every secret, keeping every silence. It does not rush, it does not need to, for the universe is not a voice, but a breath, and it is still breathing. Somewhere in that breath there is Earth, a trembling light wrapped in blue, and on it, a species made of dust and thought and longing. Fragile, furious, foolish, astonishing. They name the stars not to own them, but to feel less alone. They send metal into the void with golden records of their music, their laughter, their heartbreaks. They write poems and equations and cradle infants as if the cosmos were watching, as if the void could be moved by love. Perhaps it can. Perhaps that is why, despite everything, the stars are still burning. The universe has never needed us, but maybe that is not the point. Maybe the point is that we are here anyway and that we know it, that we can sit beside a dying fire, look up, and still find beauty in the dying light. Maybe awareness itself is the anomaly, a ripple in entropy's tide, a soft rebellion against forgetting. Maybe every thought, every act of kindness, every hand reaching into the dark, is a way of telling the silence, I was here. I saw, I felt, I mattered, and if all things must end, stars, minds, even time, then let this one thing be true before it fades, that we listened, that in the briefness between birth and extinction, we turned our faces to the sky and dared to ask not what is, but what could be. And when the answer did not come, we kept asking, not because we would live to hear it, but because the question itself was holy. There are no final words, no last wisdom, no voice waiting beyond the edge to welcome us home. There is only the drift, the long hush, the breath before the stars forget, and in that breath a whisper not loud, not certain, not even real perhaps, but it lingers, it says, do not let go.